The galaxy had been at war for centuries, and countless species had risen and fallen in the endless battle for dominance. Among them, the Alliance was considered the most powerful, a collection of highly advanced civilizations that controlled vast territories, each with powerful fleets and formidable weapons. Their military leaders were proud, certain that no enemy could ever threaten their supremacy. But even in such an age of unshakable confidence, there were whispers of something new, something dangerous, something they refused to believe. Humanity, the youngest and least experienced of the galactic players, was suddenly making headlines with a strange new weapon, a warship that, according to reports, could change the course of the entire conflict. But the leaders of the Alliance dismissed these warnings with laughter. The first message came from an unknown human ship captain. The message was brief and cryptic, but it carried a certain urgency that piqued the interest of a few. Though only for a moment. "We've built a weapon you cannot defeat. Prepare yourselves. The vigilance is coming." It sounded like the ravings of a desperate person, someone out of touch with reality. After all, humanity had always been the underdog in this galactic war. Their technology was crude compared to the advanced civilizations of the Alliance, and their fleets were small, easily overwhelmed. The captain's warning was ignored as nothing more than the fantasies of a fool. Not long after, similar warnings flooded the communication channels. Scientists, diplomats, and even civilians from various human colonies sent out repeated alerts, all carrying the same message. Humanity's warship was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Some warned that it was equipped with energy shields that could withstand even the Alliance's most advanced weapons. Others claimed that it had weapons capable of destroying entire fleets in mere seconds. And still, some spoke of a secret propulsion system that could move the ship faster than anything the Alliance had ever encountered. But no one listened. The leaders of the Alliance, too proud to even consider the possibility of human advancement, dismissed the warnings as mere exaggeration. They scoffed at the idea of humanity creating a warship capable of matching the power of the Alliance. The galaxy's top military commanders gathered in their heavily fortified war rooms, discussing the growing concern among some of the lower-ranking officers who had begun to take these warnings seriously. The overall mood was one of derision. "Do you really believe this nonsense? Humans, a species that once struggled to build a spaceship that could leave their planet, now have a warship that could change the tide of this war. Ridiculous." The commanders laughed, slapping their knees and exchanging amused glances. They were so sure of their superiority that they didn't even bother to investigate. Why should they? They controlled entire star systems. What could a single human ship possibly do? But as the days passed, the warnings didn't stop. If anything, they increased. Human colonies in the Outer Rim reported strange ships passing through their space at speeds that defied the known laws of physics. The few reports from human ships that survived encounters with the Alliance's patrols spoke of massive ships with strange, glowing energy fields surrounding them. But the Alliance commanders were unconcerned. If these ships were real, they reasoned, they would have already attacked or been destroyed. The leaders laughed off the fear spreading in their ranks, brushing it aside as a symptom of desperation. The war had dragged on for so long that even the most experienced soldiers had begun to lose hope. They were fatigued, and that weariness led to exaggerated reports and unsubstantiated rumors. This new warship, they were sure, was no different. As the Alliance prepared for its next assault on a smaller rebellious species, they received yet another warning. This one was delivered in a more formal tone, written in clear, concise language. "The vigilance is coming. Do not underestimate it. It will arrive soon, and when it does, the balance of this war will shift. Humanity is no longer the underdog you think it is. This is your final warning." The message was signed by a high-ranking human officer, someone who had served in the fleet for decades. Yet it was still met with ridicule. The Alliance commanders shared the message among themselves, mocking it as if it were a joke. "A final warning. Humans," they chuckled. "Do they really think we'll be frightened by their empty threats?" The mocking continued for weeks. Rumors circulated that the message was just a tactic, a psychological ploy to throw the Alliance off balance. They believed the human commander who sent the message had to be bluffing, perhaps a desperate attempt to save face in the face of inevitable defeat. Yet the warnings continued to grow more frequent, more insistent, and more urgent. Some of the lower-ranking officers in the Alliance began to voice their concerns in private, wondering whether there might be some truth to the reports. But each time they raised their voices, they were drowned out by the laughter and dismissive remarks of the higher-ranking commanders. The vigilance. One commander sneered. A ship that can turn the tide of war. What next? Are we supposed to fear their superior military might? They scoffed and moved on with their plans. But even as the mocking continued, something strange began to happen. Small skirmishes on the outskirts of the galaxy, areas where the human resistance had been pushed to the brink of extinction, began to turn. Outnumbered human forces, often with nothing more than outdated ships and limited resources, were suddenly winning battles they had no business winning. In the far corners of the galaxy, a quiet fear began to settle among the Alliance's forces. Some began to question whether the human warnings might not have been as ridiculous as they had first assumed. The feeling grew in the lower ranks, where whispers of the vigilance were no longer met with laughter but with unease. Yet the leaders of the Alliance remained unfazed, continuing their war efforts with a stubborn disregard for the growing whispers of a new threat. And so, as the Alliance readied itself for another major offensive, the final human message came. And this time, it wasn't ignored. We are here. The vigilance has arrived. But by then, it was too late. The mocking had gone on too long, and humanity's warship, built with technology and innovation no one had anticipated, was already entering the battlefield. The war had stretched across the galaxy for decades. Alien species with advanced technologies and ruthless strategies dominated the battlefield. The Alliance, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, had long believed themselves to be invincible. Their fleets were massive, their weapons devastating, and their influence unstoppable. But as they turned their attention to crushing a rebellious human colony on the edge of their territory, a whisper of something new began to spread through the ranks. A strange, unsettling rumor. Humanity, they said, had built a warship, an unimaginable weapon. But the Alliance dismissed it as fantasy, a false threat to distract them. After all, how could a species that had only recently discovered space travel create anything that could challenge them? The idea seemed absurd, yet the whispers wouldn't stop. Soon, reports began to surface from ships that had encountered something strange in the depths of space. Something fast, something powerful. But even then, the Alliance leaders remained confident, convinced that it was nothing more than human desperation. The truth was far different. Humanity had been working in secret, pouring every ounce of their creativity, intellect, and determination into a weapon like no other. A warship designed not just to fight, but to win. The ship was called Vigilance, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Built on Earth in a hidden facility, it was a product of humanity's drive to survive, to prove that they could stand against the galaxy's mightiest forces. The Vigilance wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of human resilience and ingenuity, a weapon born from the need to protect, to defend their colonies from the overwhelming power of the Alliance. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering. Its sleek, dark hull gleamed with an almost metallic shine, absorbing light in a way that made it hard to track. The Vigilance had no traditional weapons, at least none that the Alliance would recognize. Instead, it was powered by a new form of energy, harnessed from deep within the core of a dead star. This energy fed into an AI-driven defense and weapons system, one that could outthink, outmaneuver, and overpower anything the Alliance could throw at it. The ship's advanced propulsion system allowed it to move faster than anything the Alliance had ever encountered. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about unpredictability. The Vigilance was designed to strike without warning, to strike when least expected, and it was unstoppable. The first real encounter came as the Alliance fleet prepared to wipe out a human outpost on the distant planet of Corin. Their forces were massive, hundreds of ships ready to launch an overwhelming assault. The humans, who had once been at the mercy of the Alliance, were preparing for the end. But as the Alliance began to descend upon the planet, something strange happened. The sky lit up with flashes of light, and a massive, unidentifiable object appeared in the distance. At first, it was only a silhouette against the stars, but the Alliance commanders immediately recognized something wasn't right. The object moved too fast, too smoothly, and it was heading straight for them. They had heard the rumors. They had dismissed them as nothing more than propaganda. But now, they were seeing it for themselves. The vigilance. Within seconds, the ship fired its first shots. The Alliance ships were caught completely off guard. The energy blasts tore through their shields like paper, cutting through the hulls with terrifying ease. Ships began to disintegrate in the blink of an eye, the Alliance fleet disbanding into chaos. The vigilance didn't stop to check for survivors. It moved quickly, methodically, targeting each ship with perfect precision. Each shot was calculated, every movement made with surgical accuracy. The Alliance fleet had no idea how to react. The vigilance wasn't a weapon they could understand. It wasn't like anything they had ever faced. The reports coming in from the front lines were baffling. Soldiers who had fought in the galaxy's most brutal wars couldn't believe what they were seeing. This can't be real, one officer said as the vigilance tore through another ship. It's impossible. There's no way humans could have built something like this. But they had. And now, they were paying the price for their disbelief. As the vigilance continued its assault, the Alliance leaders scrambled to respond. They tried everything. They sent their most advanced ships, their most skilled commanders, but it was all in vain. No matter what they did, no matter how many ships they threw at the vigilance, they were no match for it. The warship seemed to be everywhere at once, its AI anticipating their every move before they made it. It was a nightmare come to life. But even as the battle raged on, the vigilance continued to strike swiftly, never staying in one place for too long. It would hit fast and disappear into the stars, reappearing in a new location to continue its onslaught. The human warship had become the galaxy's greatest mystery. No one could explain it. No one could stop it. The Alliance had built their empire on the belief that no one could rival their strength, but now they were facing the reality of humanity's power. The vigilance wasn't just a warship. It was a symbol of everything humanity had been fighting for: survival, freedom, and a chance to be seen as something more than just the underdog. The humans weren't simply fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for respect, for recognition, and for their place in the galaxy. As the warship continued its assault, the Alliance began to crumble. Whole fleets were wiped out in minutes. The once proud and mighty coalition now found themselves on the defensive, unsure of how to fight back. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. And just when it seemed like the vigilance would never stop, a message came from the ship. It was simple, but it carried a weight that none of the Alliance could ignore. We are humanity. This is our warship, and you will respect us. The message echoed across the galaxy, sending shockwaves through every corner of the Alliance. They had been wrong. They had mocked the warnings, laughed at the idea of a human warship that could threaten them. But now, they knew better. The vigilance wasn't just a weapon. It was the beginning of a new chapter in the galaxy's history. And as the Alliance scrambled to regroup, the truth became clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The darkness of space was endless, a vast sea of stars and cold nothingness stretching in all directions. For years, humanity had wondered if they were truly alone. Explorations into the furthest reaches of the galaxy had revealed only silence, endless voids, and occasionally, the faintest echoes of distant civilizations. But deep in the unexplored regions, something was stirring, something that would soon change everything. Humanity had sent out signals, probes, and messages, hoping to make contact, to find someone, or something, that could answer their questions. But the silence had always been deafening. Until one day, it wasn't. The Explorer, a deep space ship that had been cruising the outskirts of known space, was the first to receive the message. It wasn't like anything they had ever encountered. At first, it was only a static burst, the kind of interference that usually came from malfunctioning equipment. But then it repeated, and this time, the crew knew it wasn't a mistake. They didn't have the equipment to understand the signal fully, but they knew one thing for certain. It was intentional. Someone, or something, was out there, trying to communicate. The crew scrambled to decode the transmission, sending the data back to Earth, where the best minds worked tirelessly, trying to make sense of the message. The world was watching, waiting. Scientists, governments, and ordinary citizens all stood at the edge of history, hoping that humanity's first contact with an alien species would finally come. But as the message was slowly decoded, the excitement began to turn into nervous tension. The words that emerged weren't comforting. They were cryptic, strange, and filled with an underlying warning. We are the Vaulter. Your world is not ready. Leave now or face the consequences. The message ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving behind only fear and confusion. The governments of Earth immediately went into high alert. Some believed it was a threat, an alien species that was warning humanity not to advance any further into space. Others thought it was a test, a challenge to see how humanity would react. Whatever the intention behind the message, one thing was clear. Humanity's first contact had been made, and it wasn't the peaceful, hopeful meeting that many had dreamed of. It was a warning, and it was only the beginning. As the Explorer continued its mission, a strange event occurred. The ship's sensors picked up something, an enormous object, unlike anything seen before. It was not a planet, nor was it a ship. It was a massive metallic structure, floating in the vast emptiness. It appeared to be dormant, as though it had been drifting for centuries, but it was too large and too precise to be a natural formation. The crew's first thought was that this might be the source of the message. But before they could send a probe to investigate, they were intercepted. The object, which had been quiet for so long, suddenly activated. It emitted a pulse of energy, so powerful that it knocked out the Explorer's communication systems and disrupted their navigation. The crew was thrown into chaos as the ship was pulled toward the enormous structure, unable to break free from its powerful gravitational pull. It was clear now that this wasn't a friendly encounter. The Vaulter had noticed them, and they were not pleased. As the Explorer was dragged closer to the structure, the crew realized they had no choice but to land. They had no idea what awaited them, but they knew they had to make contact. The landing was rough, but they managed to touch down on the surface of the massive object. It was barren, cold, and silent, yet something about it felt alive, as though it were watching them. They gathered their equipment, ready to explore the unknown, but the moment they stepped outside the ship, something strange happened. A low hum filled the air, resonating deep within their bones. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift, and suddenly, a massive door opened before them, as though it had been waiting for them to arrive. The crew hesitated, unsure of what to do, but the call to explore was too strong. They had come this far, and now they had to know what lay within. The interior of the structure was even more alien than the exterior. The walls were made of a strange metallic substance that seemed to pulse with light, as though the entire place was alive. Massive chambers stretched out in every direction, and the air was thick with a sense of ancient power. It was clear that this place was not just a ship. It was something much older, much more mysterious, and it was waiting for them. As the crew ventured deeper into the structure, they discovered a series of strange symbols etched into the walls. They didn't understand the language, but they could feel the weight of the message behind them. It was a warning, a cautionary tale about the dangers of advancing too far into the galaxy, of attracting the attention of the vaulter. The crew's sense of unease grew with each step. They had no idea what they were walking into, but the closer they got to the center of the structure, the more they felt they were being watched. Finally, they reached a massive chamber at the heart of the structure. In the center of the room stood a throne-like chair, and sitting upon it was a figure, its form obscured by shadows. The crew froze, unsure of what to do. The figure's presence was overwhelming, and for a moment they wondered if they had made a grave mistake by coming here. But before they could retreat, the figure spoke. Its voice was deep, resonant, and filled with an ancient power. "You are the humans," it said, its words echoing in their minds. "You are the ones who have been sending your signals into the void. You have attracted our attention, and now you must face the consequences." The crew tried to speak, to explain their peaceful intentions, but the figure silenced them with a wave of its hand. "You do not understand," it said. "You are not ready. Your kind has only just begun to explore the stars, and yet you think yourselves ready to join the greater galactic community. But you are not. The vaulter will not allow it. Not yet." The crew stood there in stunned silence, unsure of how to respond. They had come seeking knowledge, seeking contact with an alien species, but now they found themselves facing something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The figure slowly rose from its throne and moved toward them, its presence filling the chamber. "Leave this place," it commanded. "Return to your world and forget what you have seen. If you continue to advance, the vaulter will be forced to take action, and you will not like the consequences." With those final words, the figure vanished into the shadows, and the chamber fell silent once again. The crew stood frozen, trying to comprehend what had just happened. They had come to make contact with an alien race, but instead they had discovered that humanity's first contact had been with a force far greater and far more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. As the explorer lifted off from the alien structure and began its journey back to Earth, the crew could only wonder what the future held. They had been warned, but would humanity listen? Or would they continue their journey into the unknown, unaware of the dangers that awaited them in the stars? Only time would tell. The war had been brewing for years, a silent battle waged in the shadows of the galaxy. Humanity had expanded beyond its homeworld, reaching distant stars, building colonies, and establishing trade routes. But with every step forward, they encountered resistance, not from nature or the dangers of space, but from those who had been watching them for centuries. The HFY, an ancient and powerful empire, had long considered themselves the rulers of the galaxy. For thousands of years, they had controlled trade, politics, and warfare, ensuring that no species ever rose to challenge them. When they first learned of humanity, they dismissed them as insignificant, another young race doomed to fade before ever becoming a true power. But as the years passed, they realized their mistake. Humanity was different. They were not just surviving, they were thriving. And the HFY would not allow it. The first attack came without warning. One of Earth's furthest colonies, New Dawn, was obliterated in a single strike. There were no survivors, no transmissions, only silence. The message was clear. Humanity had gone too far, and the HFY were ready to put an end to them before they could become a threat. But they had underestimated the human spirit. Unlike other species that had submitted to HFY rule, humanity refused to surrender. They had been fighting wars on their own world for centuries, learning, adapting, and growing stronger. And now, faced with an enemy far beyond anything they had encountered before, they did what they always did. They fought back. The war spread like wildfire, consuming entire star systems. The HFY had numbers, advanced technology, and experience, but humans had something far more dangerous: unpredictability. The HFY relied on their superior strategies, believing their ancient battle doctrines would crush humanity in days. But humans were chaotic, refusing to fight in ways the HFY could understand. They launched ambushes, used outdated tactics that should have failed, and turned their own weaknesses into strengths. Every time the Xylari crushed a fleet, another would rise in its place. They began to realize that humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something different, something dangerous. The turning point came at the Battle of Helios Prime. It was humanity's last stronghold in the sector, a massive station orbiting a dying star. If it fell, the war would be lost. The Xylari gathered their largest fleet, determined to end the resistance once and for all. Thousands of warships descended upon the station, ready to wipe humanity from existence. But the humans were waiting. They had learned from every battle, every mistake, and other race had ever dared to use in war. Artificial intelligence merged with human pilots, creating warriors that thought faster, reacted quicker, and fought with the fury of a species that refused to die. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Xylari fought with precision, their ships moving in perfect harmony, their weapons cutting through the human defenses. But for every ship they destroyed, two more took its place. The human eye pilots adapted in real time, countering every move before the Xylari could even process what was happening. The battlefield became a graveyard of burning wreckage, and for the first time in their long history, the Xylari began to understand fear. As the battle raged, the Xylari command ship, the Eternal Dominance, became the center of the conflict. It was the most powerful warship ever built, capable of destroying entire fleets on its own. The Xylari believed it was invincible. Humanity saw it as their final target. A single human warship, the Iron Will, broke through the enemy lines, piloted by an AI-enhanced commander named Captain Elias Kane. His ship was outmatched in every way, but he didn't hesitate. He had one mission: destroy the Eternal Dominance, no matter the cost. The Iron Will weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire, moving faster than any Xylari ship had ever seen. The AI within the ship processed every movement, predicting the enemy's attacks before they happened. The Eternal Dominance unleashed its full firepower, but Kane didn't slow down. He knew he wouldn't survive this mission, but that didn't matter. Humanity needed a victory, and he was going to give it to them. The moment came in a flash. The Iron Will reached the heart of the enemy flagship, crashing into its reactor core. The explosion tore through the Eternal Dominance, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The Xylari fleet, witnessing the destruction of their greatest warship, faltered. For the first time, they hesitated, and in that hesitation, humanity struck. The remaining human forces pushed forward, driving the Xylari back, turning the tide of battle in an instant. The war was not over. The Xylari were still powerful, still dangerous, but for the first time in history, they had been defeated. They had always believed themselves to be the ultimate rulers of the galaxy, untouchable and invincible. But now, they knew the truth. Humanity was not just another species to conquer. They were fighters, survivors, and something far more terrifying, an enemy that would never stop fighting. As the remaining Xylari ships retreated, a message was sent to the human forces. It was a simple transmission, but it carried a weight of meaning that would shape the future of the galaxy. We underestimated you. We will not make that mistake again. The war was far from over, but humanity had done the impossible. They had fought for control, and they had won. But in the vast darkness of space, new enemies were watching, waiting. The battle for survival had only just begun. The galaxy had always been vast, filled with mysteries, dangers, and countless civilizations, but the day humanity arrived on the scene, everything changed. For centuries, the galaxy had been ruled by powerful empires, ancient races, and ruthless warlords. They had shaped the course of history, controlled the flow of resources, and dictated the laws of the universe. But the humans, with their unpredictable nature and relentless ambition, disrupted the fragile balance in ways no one had ever expected. It all began when the first human colony ship, The Dawnbreaker arrived at a distant star system known as Viren, once a peaceful hub for trade and cultural exchange. The Virens had never faced anything like humanity's arrival. Their ships were sleek, silent, and efficient. Humanity's ships, on the other hand, were chaotic and brash, a direct reflection of the humans themselves. The Virens had thought it was just another expansion, another race joining the galactic community. They were wrong. Humanity didn't simply settle in the Viren system. They took it by storm. Their military technology, despite being new and crude compared to the ancient empires, was innovative and unpredictable. Human ships operated in ways that defied the conventional tactics the other species had used for centuries. Instead of relying on long-range precision weaponry and careful planning, humanity used brute force, surprise, and speed. They overwhelmed the Viren defenses with sheer numbers and relentless attacks, leaving them no time to react. The Virens, caught off guard and unable to adapt to the humans' unconventional methods, fell quickly. Once the humans took control, they did not stop there. They turned Viren into a thriving industrial powerhouse, pushing the planet's resources to their limits. The Virens, once proud of their long-lasting peace, were now left to serve the new order that humanity had brought. They had no choice but to comply, realizing that resistance would be futile. And as the humans expanded to other systems, this new way of life spread like wildfire. It was no longer about peaceful coexistence or negotiation. It was about dominance, and humanity was not afraid to take what they wanted. The galaxy had always been a place where power was held by the oldest and most established races. But humanity, with their boundless energy and fearlessness, turned the old ways upside down. The galaxy had never known a species that would so boldly take control, not just of land, but of hearts and minds. The human message was clear. The old empires and ancient powers were no longer the ones in charge. A new power had risen, and it was ready to claim its place at the top. But not everyone was willing to bow down to humanity's rise. The Ardent Coalition, an alliance of some of the most ancient and powerful species in the galaxy, was the first to challenge humanity's growing influence. They were a coalition of beings that had lived for millennia, watching empires rise and fall. The Ardent believed that their long history made them the rightful rulers of the galaxy, and they were not about to let a young, impulsive species take control without a fight. The first clash between the Ardent and humanity was inevitable. Humanity's unrelenting expansion had begun to encroach on territories the Ardent held sacred. The Ardent sent a fleet to deal with the humans, thinking their advanced technology and sheer power would be enough to crush the upstart species. They were wrong. The battle that ensued near the outer rim of the galaxy was fierce, unlike anything the Ardent had faced before. Humanity fought with the kind of desperation and will to survive that their opponents couldn't understand. The battle lasted for days, and when it finally ended, it was humanity that stood victorious. The Ardent fleet had been decimated, and their pride shattered. After the battle, the galaxy took notice. The Ardent, once the unquestioned rulers of vast swathes of space, had been defeated by a species that was still in its infancy. The old powers of the galaxy began to realize that their time had come and gone. The rules had changed. Humanity, once dismissed as a young and insignificant species, had proven that they could not only survive in this harsh galaxy, they could thrive. The news of humanity's victory spread like wildfire, and other species began to reevaluate their positions. Some saw the humans as a new force to be reckoned with, while others feared what the future held. But one thing was certain: humanity's arrival had set the stage for a new era. The old empires, once united under the assumption that they were the masters of the galaxy, were now fractured. They had been forced to face the reality that the galaxy was no longer a place where only the ancient could rule. The humans had arrived, and they weren't leaving. Humanity's influence grew rapidly after the battle with the Ardent. They formed alliances with species that had once considered them too young and too unpredictable to trust. These alliances were not based on tradition or diplomacy. They were based on power, on mutual benefit, and on survival. Humans didn't care about the old ways of the galaxy. They cared about progress, about growth, and about winning. And they were willing to do whatever it took to secure their place at the top. The Xilari, one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy, had been watching from the shadows. For centuries, they had ruled with an iron fist, ensuring that no species could rise to challenge them. But when they saw what humanity had done to the Virans and the Ardent, they knew that their time was coming to an end. The Xilari were ancient, but they were not immune to change. They understood that the galaxy was no longer theirs to control. In the coming years, the Xilari, along with many other species, would be forced to reconsider their position in the galaxy. Humanity's presence was undeniable, and the old ways could no longer hold sway. The galaxy was in the midst of a transformation. The old powers, the ancient species that had once held the galaxy in their grasp, were being pushed aside, and in their place stood humanity, ready to take control. But the humans, in their unrelenting drive to shape the galaxy according to their will, began to make mistakes. In their rush to expand, they alienated some of their allies. The galaxy was not as simple as they had once believed. There were other forces at work, dark forces that sought to undermine the new order. And soon, humanity would find itself facing